Hello, I'm John Johnson, Editor-in-Chief of Secrets of Home Theater and High Fidelity. Welcome to Secret Studios here in Redwood City, California. I have with me Dr. Poh Hsu, who is president of Hsu Research, a subwoofer and speaker manufacturer located in Southern California. Dr. Hsu, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became interested in designing subwoofers.
Well, I guess I have interest in hi-fi since I was about 5 years old.
Wow.
When my brother got me interested in it, and I've always liked bass. And at that time, I was at MIT and couldn't really afford to buy any really good ones, so I decided to build my own. So that's how I got started, the interest in building subwoofers for myself, and then it slowly grew from there.
When was Hsu Research formed, and what was your first product?
The company was formed in 1991, and the first product is a 7-foot tall subwoofer, the HRSW12. It's a passive subwoofer. It's got a single 12-inch driver mounted right at the very top, and the port facing down at the bottom.
One 12-inch driver and a 7-foot enclosure.
Yes. So the enclosure is 12 inches in diameter. It's actually a sonotube. And so you just mount the 12-inch woofer at the top, and there's a port at the bottom, and it's passive. You can get it with a speaker to line level crossover or electronic crossover.
What was the tuning frequency of this product?
It's about 20 hertz.
20 hertz, wow. What's involved in designing a subwoofer, such as computerized modeling of the enclosure shape, size, port, and driver?
I wrote a little program of my own at that time, and I used that to calculate the enclosure size and the port length and port diameter needed. So it's a spreadsheet form, and so I just put in actually when I design it, what I usually do is to decide on a certain size that I want and certain tuning, and then calculate what the length of the port required and the parameters for the woofer to fit the particular enclosure I had in mind.
Do you still use this software?
I still do use it as an initial, because it's not as accurate as like using Leap or something like that to calculate. So that's a fast and rough way. I would use that first, and then
go on to something like Leap.
Yeah, right.
How have subwoofers changed in the last decade? Small but powerful switching amplifiers come to mind.
I think the tendency is for them to be more and more powerful. There are actually two different groups, I think. There's one trend that tend to go towards the smaller and smaller subwoofers, like the Sunfire or some of the Velodynes, where they put a huge 1 kilowatt or 2 kilowatt amplifier with woofers where the surround is like a tire in a very small box. So those are very low efficiency, and that's why they need very high power. So that, I think, is particularly suitable for the market where the wife don't want to see something big. And there's another group of people that tend to go more toward providing very high output capability but bigger subs, I think there's two different trends that I see there.
I noticed that your products tend to use 12-inch drivers most of the time. Is there any reason why you haven't adopted, say, 15 or 18-inch drivers in your designs?
No particular reason. For the size of enclosures that we are using, we find that 12-inch seem fairly adequate. If we were to go with a seal box design, for example, that require much larger air to be moved by the driver, then we would consider going to 15 or 18. But because we prefer to use a vented cabinet, where at the lowest frequencies where you need to move the most air, we have the ports pushing the air. So far we haven't really found it necessary to go beyond a 12. And we are also advocates of using to build up a subwoofer system using a modular approach where you can get even higher output by simply adding a second one of the same thing. And one of the things we advocate about that is that you can upgrade without obsoleting what you already purchased.
Of the three factors, enclosure, driver, and amplifier, is any one factor more important than the others?
I think every one of those are equally important. If you mess up on one, you don't have a good system. So all three are critical, I think.
How does a consumer go about choosing a subwoofer?
That is only based on my perception of it, which could be wrong. But I think a lot of people out there are interested in good value for money. I think they want, with the advent of Dolby Digital and SACDs and all that, I think there are more and more requirement for subwoofers that can go low and play loud and play clean.
Can you use a big subwoofer in a small room, or should you use a small subwoofer if you have a small room?
I don't think that there's such a thing as having too much subwoofer. The more powerful the subwoofer is, the more headroom you have, and the lower distortion for a given listening level, usually. So I would say that there's no such thing as being too big for a room, other than the wife factor. The wife may not want to see a big subwoofer in a small room, but for the husband, I think the bigger the better.
Is one big subwoofer better than two small subs, or is it better to have more than one subwoofer?
I don't think that there's any particular harm in having one big sub other than the inconvenience of having to move it around, of shipping it, and being unable to have an upgrade path to it. As I mentioned earlier, we advocate using a modular approach, so a person can get a medium-sized or a relatively small subwoofer first, and when they want to upgrade to a higher power, they can just get more of the same thing or add modules or whatever to improve the performance.
Tell us about your new modular designs with the turbocharger and ways of extending the size of the enclosure.
Yeah, the new concept we come up with, which we've applied for a patent, is an extension of what we had been doing before. Several years ago, we came up with the concept of what we call the VTF series, which stands for Variable Tuning Frequency, which allows the consumer to choose the trade-off in the subwoofer design. Basically, when an engineer designs a subwoofer, he has to choose a set of trade-offs for the consumer, which may not be what the consumer wants. When you design a subwoofer for a given budget, you cannot have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it be able to play very loud, go very low, and have very low distortion all at the same time for a given budget. So the engineer basically has to decide, well, maybe the customer wanted to play quite loud, so in which case for that budget I can't make it go very low, or for that matter, for that size of enclosure, it may not be budget oriented, but maybe say for a given size enclosure, you also have trade-offs based on that. So with the VTF series, what we did is to allow the consumer to choose the trade-off. So the engineer then designed the subwoofer to be able to, say, play lower but doesn't play as loud, or to be able so that the consumer can set it to play louder but doesn't go quite as low. And what we had done initially was the VTF series that we introduced a few years ago is to provide 2 ports, and the consumer can plug up one of the ports and change the equalization of the subsonic filter, so that if he leaves both ports open, the enclosure is tuned higher where it can get higher output but doesn't go as low. So, or to plug up one of the ports so that it goes lower but doesn't play quite as loud. The disadvantage of that approach is that when you plug up one port, the air now all has to rush out through a single port instead of both, so the air velocity doubles. And that leads to some port noise issue in the extended bass mode. So then we came out with the idea that, well, instead of reducing the cross-sectional area, the other way to get the lower tune without having to change the cross-sectional area is to lengthen the port. So that's how we came out with the concept of using a external structure to lengthen the ports on the subwoofer.
So the turbocharger is basically a module that you place on top of the VTF series that extends the length of the port and also adds some volume, or does it just extend the port?
No, it just extends the ports in this case. The additional box that we have is just physically there to hold the ports there and to make it a little bit more decorative than just having the port tubes hanging there.
And there's also a module that will allow you to extend or double the volume of the box too, right? How does that work?
So having thought of extending the port length, we thought another approach to allowing both ports to stay open and tune it lower is that you increase the enclosure volume to do that. So that product will be coming out later, and we're going to call that a supercharger instead of a turbocharger. And the way to do that is that we have what we call a bridge that would bridge between the new enclosure and the existing subwoofer. And the amplifier then gets taken out, and the bridge goes where the amplifier was on the original subwoofer, and the amp now mounts on the side of the bridge.
Well, Dr. Hsu, thanks for coming by and visiting us here at Secret Studios.
You're most welcome.